Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. The gyroscope that you're looking at right now was created completely using vibrator tags. No animation with keyframes whatsoever. So we're going to look at how we can go about setting that up. We're also using the Sketch and Toon effect. If you don't know what that is, it's what's given us our stylized hand-drawn feel to our final render. So let's get started on this. Stay tuned, here we go. Okay guys, so first of all we're going to create a tube and we're going to set the inner radius of this to 170 and we want to set the height of this to about 60 centimeters and we want to tick the fillet here and bring the segments down to 1 and bring the radius to about 6 centimeters. NB in your keyboard to show lines, and let's add some rotation segments to smoothen that out. So about 110, so it's going to be nice and smooth. We want to change the orientation of our tube to be +Z, and next we're going to add our nuts to the side of this here. So in your content browser you'll find nut caps, and to find those, just zoom out here, we go to content browser, presets, go to visualize and go into 3D objects. Scroll down until you see the screws folder and open that up. You can zoom in with this little zoom here and we're looking for the nut cap, which is here. Double click on that to open it up. Go back into your objects tab there, and now we're going to hit S on our keyboard to zoom into the selected object and hit R to rotate. Hold down shift after you click to rotate in increments of 10 and bring that to -90 degrees. Now we want to also make that a bit bigger. It's a bit small. Increase the size of that so it's about that size relative to our tube, and we are going to create a cylinder that's going to fit in here. So let's create a cylinder and we can make this cylinder a child of our nut cap. Hit Shift C in your keyboard, type in PSR and then reset PSR. Just double click on that. You can actually drag that up to your tool panel here, so you'll have it for future use for this tutorial. So click on that and that will reset the cylinder so it's aligned to our nut cap. Hit S on your keyboard and let's decrease the scale of this here so that it's going to fit nicely into our nut cap. Make sure it's not poking out the end here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now we want to have one of these nut caps on either side of our tube. So to make sure that the nut cap's going to be sticking out and it's going to be the nut cap itself is going to be the same distance from our tube on each side, the best way to do that is with a cloner. So middle mouse click on your nut cap object. That's going to select the nut cap and all of the children. Right click, go down to connect objects and delete. That'll become one object. Let's get rid of our material. We don't need any materials for this tutorial. We're going to be using Sketch and Toon. And once you've done that, go to MoGraph, go down to cloner, make the nut cap a child of the cloner, and then select the cloner object. Make sure that mode is set to radial. Go to your transform tab and in banking set that to be -90. Set it to be +90. Let's go into our object tab and reduce the count to 2 because we only need 2. And we're going to go to our coordinates tab and again set banking here to 90 degrees. Now if we go to our object tab, we can increase the radius so that our nut caps here are going to just stick out of our tube, but they're going to be sticking out at equal distances. So that's looking pretty good. Right now our cloner object's making our nut caps white. So what we can do is, as we don't need our cloner anymore, we can just middle mouse click to select the cloner and all of its children, right click and go to connect objects and delete. Now we are going to have one object and we're going to call it nut caps. Cool. We're also going to call this tube outer. And we're going to hold down control, click and drag down to duplicate that, and this is going to be called inner. So now we have two tubes, but we want to decrease the scale of the inner tube here. So with it selected, go to your object tab and we're going to decrease the inner radius by about 40 centimeters. So just type in -40 and hit tab. C4D will do the math for you. And then do the same for the outer radius. Type in -40 and hit tab. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to repeat that step again. So I want to duplicate this inner tube. Hold down control, click and drag down. That'll create a duplicate. We're going to reduce the inner radius by 40 centimeters. And we're going to do the same with the outer radius. We're going to do it again. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to reduce the inner radius again by 40 centimeters and the outer radius by 40 centimeters. And we're going to do it one more time. Drag that down, click and drag, holding down control to duplicate. And we're going to reduce, we're going to go rogue for this one. So we're going to just eyeball this until it looks good. Okay. So I don't know why we lost our fillet there, but it came back anyway. Just bring our, if you've lost yours, bring the radius up to about 3 centimeters. Maybe even 4. Just so our center one's looking all different and nice. Let's turn off our grid because it's in the way. And now we have our tubes all set up and ready to go. Now we need to set up connections. So we need cylinders that's going to connect this outer tube to this inner tube, and one on each side. And we also need cylinders that's going to connect this tube to this tube, and we need more cylinders to connect this tube to this tube and this tube to this tube. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to create a cylinder, and I am going to make sure that the orientation is set to +X on that. Let's bring the radius down to about 6 centimeters. Let's go for 5. And let's set the height to about 50 for now. We can reduce that if needs be. Now select your cylinder, select your move tool, and just drag that over here. So try and get it kind of in between the outer tube and this inner tube here. Doesn't have to be exact, as long as it's not sticking out from either this side or this side. Once that's done, we're going to create a duplicate of that for our right side. So hold down control, and with the X axis hovered over, just click and drag to bring that over there. You can S on your keyboard to zoom in, so you can zoom in on the object that's selected and make sure that that's centered there in between the two tubes. Okay, so that is that. We are going to do the same now for this tube and this tube, but the connectors for these are going to go down along the y-axis. So first of all, let's select the two cylinders that we just created and make them children of this object here. because we're doing that for a reason, which you'll find out later. So next, let's create another cylinder. What we can do is, we'll create another cylinder, and we are going to set the radius of this to be a little bit smaller than this one. So this one will set to 5. So we'll set this one to be 4. And we'll reduce the height to about, say, 25 centimeters. Now let's bring that up so it's just in between this object and this object. So select it, hit S on your keyboard to zoom in to the selected object, and just make sure that that's in between those two objects. Cool. Once that's done, we're going to hold down Control, and we're going to drag down along the y-axis there to duplicate that object. S again on your keyboard to zoom into the selected object, and just make sure that's centered in between those two there. Okay, so we have some vertical connectors and we have some horizontal connectors. So let's just take the two cylinders that we just created. We're calling them connectors, and we'll make them children of this inner tube here. Now let's grab these two. We can hold down Control so that we're going to duplicate them, click and drag, and make them children of this tube right here. Now go to your scale tool, and using the X axis here, just drag this inwards. Now you can see that our two cylinders are being dragged in to meet each other in the middle, and they're also scaling down, which is perfect for what we're trying to do, because each of our cylinders, as they get closer to the center, are also getting smaller. So that's what we're hoping they'll do, and that's exactly what they're doing. So once you have them about here, remember we're connecting this object to this object now. Just make sure that they're not sticking out, or that they're not that they're also touching each of the two objects we're trying to connect. And now we're going to repeat that step with these two cylinders here. They're going to connect this center tube to this almost center tube. So let's grab these two that we just selected here, hold down Control, drag these down, and make them children of this inner 0.3 tube here. Now we're going to select our scale tool, and we're going to drag this down along the y-axis. So again, they're going to pull down to meet in the middle, and they're also going to scale down in size. So these are a bit small. They're not going to be long enough to actually connect this tube to this tube. So what we can do is, with them both selected, so let's actually just deselect everything and then hold down Control to select the two of them. Go to Object tab and increase the height. Increase the height. Now again, make sure they're not sticking out, and that they're also connecting both the objects. Okay, so that's brilliant. We have the outer tube connected to the inner tube, and the inner tube's connected to the inner tube, and so on and so forth. So now we want to, what do we want to do? We want to make this one single object. So middle mouse click on the inner 0.3 object. That will select this object and its children. Right click and go to connect objects and delete. Middle mouse click on the inner 0.2, right click, connect objects and delete. Repeat that step for inner 0.1 and inner. So now we have these 4 inner objects and 1 outer object. The outer object's not going to move, so we want to be able to rotate the inner object, and it's going to rotate along the x-axis because it's connected here and here. It's not going to be able to do this, obviously. It's just going to be able to do this. And while it's doing that, we want all of the inner objects below it to follow along. So to do that, we need to make the inner 2 a child of inner 1. We need to make inner 3 a child of inner 2, and inner 4 a child of inner 3. Now if we click on inner 1, and if we rotate that, you can see that all of the children are going to follow. Same if we click on inner 2, and this one can only rotate along the y-axis because it's connected here and here. All the children are going to follow, and that's going to happen right across the board, which is great. So now that we've got that set up, we can go ahead and add our Vibrate tags, and our Vibrate tags are what's going to give us our random rotation. So let's click on our inner 1 object first, right click, go to Cinema 4D tags, and go down to the Vibrate tag. Now make sure your Vibrate tag is selected and go down to the Enable Rotation checkbox and check that. Now we're going to set the seed here to 1. Well, we could have left it at 0, but just set it to 1 for now. And we're going to set the amplitude in the pitch field here to be 1000 degrees, and we're going to set the frequency to be 0.1, and make sure to set the amplitude in the heading field there to 0. Cool. Now for the inner point 2, we're going to do the same, create or add a Vibrate tag, and we're going to set the seed for this one to be 2. We're going to enable rotation. We're going to set the amplitude in the heading field to be 600 degrees, and we're going to set the frequency to be 0.3. Now we're going to create another Vibrate tag for this inner point 3 object, and we are going to enable rotation. We're going to set the seed on this one to be 3, and the amplitude is going to be set to 500 in the pitch field, and the frequency is going to be set to 0.2. And then for inner point 4, again add a Vibrate tag, and we're going to set the seed on this one to be 4, and let's enable rotation, and in the heading field we'll set the amplitude to be 600 and the frequency to be 0.2. Okay, so if this is all set up correctly, and it should be, this should work. So let's hit play on this. Okay, so as you can see, our hierarchy is giving us the desired effect that we're after, and our Vibrate tags is giving us the random rotation, and each of these have a different amplitude, so that's looking pretty damn cool. So what I want to do now is create a camera, make it active. I'm going to zero it out on the X, Y, and the Z, just bring it back here along the Z, and zero it out here in the rotation fields. So let's center this up in our scene, and I just want to pause that there, and I want to also create an infinite light, and this is going to have shadow set to area. We're going to go for a density of 80%, and we're going to rotate it so that it is pointing, see that white line there? It's going to be pointing down along this general direction. So it's pointing down that way. And let's do a render of this. Okay, so now you might not be seeing that because I already have my Sketch and Toon turned on. So your Sketch and Toon will be turned off. So if you render this out now, you're going to get this. Now you want to turn on Sketch and Toon for our cool sketched effect. So in your render settings, go to effect, and you'll find Sketch and Toon down here. Now I'm not going to see if Sketch and Toon is here. I'll remove it, go to Effect, and then Sketch and Toon's right there. There's a bunch of settings here you can mess around with if you want, but this is going to give us a really nice effect straight off the bat. Okay guys, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.